evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Mitchell Ringos. Well, people who get their news on Facebook or Instagram may soon have to look elsewhere. Today, the social media giant Facebook threatened to block access to all news on its platforms if the government doesn't change the proposed Online News Act. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver has what you need to know.
A federal government bill that aims to make social media giants pay for news content reposted on their platforms has angered big tech, with Meta today saying if the Online News Act passes in its current form, we will end the availability of news content on Facebook and Instagram for people in Canada.
They're not happy with, a rule that would essentially make them pay part of their profits to someone else. And so they're going to do everything that they can to protect themselves.
The Heritage Minister has said he will not be intimidated by what he considers a threat and has called on the company to negotiate fair deals with news outlets who compete with tech firms for advertising dollars.
I think there's a real likelihood that we will all lose. Users of these platforms will lose the ability to share news. This will ultimately harm Canadian media, in particularly small and independent media. And there won't be the kind of big payout that I think some are looking for.
Meta's decision, which centers around a lack of clarity about the bill's financial burden, comes 1 month after Google Canada decided to block about 4% of Canadian users without notice from viewing news content on its site.
You're a $1.2, $1.3 trillion company, and I think you've overexceeded your boundaries.
Grilled at a parliamentary committee yesterday, Google Canada executives said it was simply a test.
It's really a core part of improving user experience, improving user outcomes in technology. And it is a very common practice for almost any technology company in Canada.
And like Meta, Google is pressuring Ottawa to change the Online News Act or risk news being less available.
We want to include news in our products. However, C18 puts a price on free links to news sites, provides no clarity or certainty as to what that price might be, and requires payment to an extremely broad range of outlets and organizations, even if they don't produce news.
The online news bill has passed in the House of Commons and currently sitting in the Senate. The bill is expected to pass before Parliament rises for the summer. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
Thunder Bay Fire responded to a structural fire in the 200 block of Windsor Street at around 11:30 last night. Upon arrival, crews encountered heavy smoke coming from the building and then made entry to apply water and get the fire under control quickly. All occupants were evacuated prior to the first arriving units, as there were no injuries to civilians or firefighters as a result of this fire. A total of 6 pumpers, an aerial ladder, and a command vehicle responded to the incident. Thunder Bay Fire Rescue would like to remind residents never to leave cooking unattended to ensure all smoke detectors are in working order. The Lakehead University Native Student Association is hosting their 33rd annual powwow at the C.J. Sanders Fieldhouse this weekend, with Lakehead students and the local community coming together to celebrate Indigenous culture and dance. The annual powwow is a signature event that showcases tremendous talent and entertainment free of charge, while reinforcing traditional aspects of Indigenous culture such as drumming, dancing, singing, and giving thanks. The event started on Friday with warm-ups, followed by the grand entry on Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m., along with a traditional feast that took place later in the day. And this was the first time since 2019 that the powwow was able to be hosted in person, as the last 2 have been virtual. Lakehead University Vice Provost Denise Baxter says being back in person adds a whole different element.
A powwow is a celebration. It is a time of coming together. And, when people can come into that circle with us and just be part of that, I think those are the really important times that we do come together.
Organizing the powwow was the Lakehead University Native Student Association, which is completely ran by students. Their goal is to promote the spirit of unity among Indigenous students at LU through social, cultural, and recreation events, in addition to promoting cultural awareness. LUNZA President Jordan Thompson Van Conant says the powwow is much more than just a celebration. It's also a wonderful learning opportunity.
It's a great stepping stone to allowing these Indigenous students to feel more welcomed in these school spaces, because in the past it has failed them in that aspect because they unfortunately aren't always welcomed. So I feel like this is a great way to promote their culture and to promote them as people, to bring them into the community and to strengthen their bond with everybody.
The 33rd annual powwow will continue on Sunday at 11 a.m. for another grand entry, followed by the closing ceremonies until 4 p.m. Northern Development Minister Greg Rickford was trumpeting the success of Northern companies at this week's Prospectors and Developers Convention in Toronto. Rickford was asked about PDAC at Queen's Park earlier this week.
Speaker, can the minister please provide information about how our government is partnering and supporting Northern Ontario businesses as part of this conference and all the opportunities that will stem from that?
But there's an important narrative developing on the floor of PDAC, Mr. Speaker, and it's through the Northern Ontario Mining Showcase. And it narrates a story about what's really happening on the ground in Northern Ontario, the need for Northern Ontario development. Investments, Mr. Speaker, that are targeted at companies in the service and supply sector, Mr. Speaker. They don't just work in mining, they work across resources, Mr. Speaker, but they tell a story, an exciting one at that, about how our businesses are transforming our communities with real economic support, Mr. Speaker, promoting Ontario's northern development.
Thunder Bay Superior North MPP Lise Vaugeois also spoke at Queen's Park this week, questioning the Progressive Conservatives about measures they're taking to prevent elder abuse. The questions were directed to Raymond Cho, who serves as the Minister for Seniors and Accessibility.
During COVID, when so many seniors experienced extreme isolation, rates of abuse increased by 250%. Yet, the government chose this time to actually cut elder abuse prevention's funding. So they went from a budget of $900,000, which is not a lot, considering that they're supposed to cover the entire province, but they went down to $800,000. That's a very significant cut, and that was during COVID. Will the government live up to its obligations to older Ontarians and increase funding for the important work of preventing elder abuse?
$59 million since 2018 to fund really 300 senior active living centers across the province. They deliver activities, programs that keep seniors active and socially connected. Through our senior fairs, we are helping seniors connect to local organizations and each other all across Ontario.
Northern craft brewers are concerned over Ottawa's latest alcohol tax on beer, wine, and spirits that's coming April 1st. It's a 6.3% hike based on the rate of inflation. CTV's Corey Nordstrom reports.
Many view the pouring of a pint as a relaxing experience, but in the world of craft brewing, few are calm about an impending tax increase. The owners of Outspoken Brewery believe the timing of a proposed 6.3% raising of the federal excise is wrong.
I would say that we haven't fully recovered from the pandemic.
Craft brewers are still struggling with the same inflationary issues as most small businesses, and they know the added costs will trickle down.
So it's not just a few extra $100 here because of excise duty has increased 6.3%. It's also there's a few more $100 here, and there's a few more $100 here. A few more $100 here. So yeah, it makes a material difference when you add everything up, definitely. And that's passed down to the customer. I mean, that's where it goes. So it pinches everybody along the way.
The government says the increase is related to inflation. The excise tax is calculated on a sliding scale based on the production from brewers and distillers.
It's not anything that's going to sink a business like ours, but it's things that are noticeable. Because it's all scalable. It's these types of taxes affect at a volume-based level.
The Canadian Craft Brewers Association is challenging the government on the tax hike, concerned that higher prices could lose loyal customers.
Prices continue to increase. Of course, that's going to squeeze people's pockets, and they're going to be more conscious of what they're spending their money on.
For most craft breweries, the increase to the federal excise tax will only amount to a yearly cost of $440. While that's certainly manageable, there is worry in the industry that it could set a precedent when brewers believe they are already highly taxed.
We want the current rates that these smaller breweries are paying to decrease We have a proposal into government right now where our working document is looking at a 21% increase. So that these small breweries would actually end up saving roughly $1,500 per year.
Time is running out for advocates. The government's tax increase is slated for April 1st. Corey Nordstrom, CTV News, Sault Ste. Marie.
It's going to be a night of fun at the expense of a well-known Thunder Bay lawyer, all in support of a great cause. Easter Seals has opened up ticket sales for their 18th annual Celebrity Roast, with the funds raised going towards supporting children with physical disabilities. Hour is Johnny D. Baker, who will be roasted by a group of friends and peers in the legal community. D. Baker says while he knows he'll be the target of some tough jokes, it's all worth it because of what the money raised will support.
You know, if it wasn't for the Easter Seals kids and the good that they do in the community, I have no interest in subjecting myself to this kind of thing. But, you know, it is for a good cause, and the goal is to raise a lot of money for the kids at Easter Seals.
It means a lot to me because I got the experience to go to camp, and I was really excited and really happy. And I believe they're going to get me a walk-in shower to help me get into the tub easier.
This year's event is on April 6th at the Victoria Inn, with tickets costing $125. We're now joined by sports anchor Vasilios Bellos. Now, plenty going on in the sports world, but especially busy at the Gardens throughout the day.
Throughout the day. Great day to go down to Fort William Gardens for sure. First off, we got Thunderwolves' massive game tonight. Before that, we had Walleye North Stars. And even before that, North Stars game started off with a ceremony for Krista McCarville's ring, coming off that great performance at the Scotties. We're going to have all the highlights after the break.